June 7th, 2019, at 9:30 in the morning. The ranger station logbook still carries her handwriting. Solo day hike, clearing weather. A receipt from the visitor store, time-stamped 8:54 a.m., records 1 bottle of water, a granola bar, and a plastic poncho. Witnesses remembered calm air, heavy humidity, and the faint sound of cicadas under rising sunlight. She adjusted her pack straps, checked the GPS waypoint on her wrist unit, and looked once over her shoulder toward the parking lot. Routine movement, nothing notable. Minutes later, the footage ends, just tree line, wind, and filtered daylight. 3 hours afterward, no further signal registered on the park's emergency locator grid. Before the storm reached the ridge, her name became an entry on an incident form, not a signature. On a trail register, it was daylight, safe, and ordinary. Until it wasn't. The morning of June 7th, 2019 began like any other summer day in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Leanne McCord, a 29-year-old environmental science teacher from Knoxville, arrived at the Alum Cave Trailhead Visitor Center at approximately 8:45 a.m. Park records would later document every mundane detail of her arrival. The beige Toyota Corolla with Tennessee plates entering the parking area at 8:38. The credit card purchase at the visitor center store at 8:54. Even the casual conversation with Ranger Thomas Webb about trail conditions. Weather systems moving in by late afternoon, Webb would later recall in his statement to investigators. I advised all hikers to be off the ridge by 1500 hours. She acknowledged with a nod, seemed experienced. Nothing that would have flagged concern. The visitor center security footage, preserved now in the case archives, shows Leanne moving with the practiced efficiency of an experienced hiker. She wore moisture-wicking hiking pants in dark green, a light blue technical shirt with long sleeves, and a Garmin GPS watch that occasionally caught the light as she moved through the equipment check routine. Her dark hair was braided tightly back, secured with what the report would later identify as a yellow elastic band recovered from the scene. At 9:22 a.m., Leanne approached the trailhead register. The pen scratched audibly against the paper in the footage, one of the few clear sounds beyond the mumble of other visitors and the distant hollow call of a raven somewhere beyond the tree line. Her signature appears controlled and deliberate. L. McCord, solo day hike, returning approx. 16 Ouriques. The timestamp confirms completion at 9:26. The trail registry supervisor would later testify that everything appeared routine. We process between 50 and 70-day hikers during peak season. Nothing in her preparation indicated risk factors. Her final documented moments came from the trailhead camera, capturing her adjusting her backpack straps, checking what appears to be a GPS waypoint, and stepping onto the trail. The forest sounds swallowed her footsteps within seconds. Light dappled through the overhead canopy, creating a natural camouflage pattern that shifted with the breeze. The smell of damp earth and pine rose from the forest floor, mixing with the faint scent of insect repellent that still clung to her clothing. At 10:15, her mother left a voicemail that would remain unheard. Just checking you made it to the trail okay? Call when you're back at the car? When official documentation of the case was compiled weeks later, her preparation would be noted as exemplary and consistent with safe hiking protocols. Ranger Webb's shift report filed that evening before Leanne was considered missing noted routine visitor traffic, no incidents. Her phone last pinged cell tower TNGSM 43 at 9:41 a.m., placing her approximately 1 mile up the Alum Cave Trail. The automated emergency response system recorded no distress signals from her registered GPS unit. Last confirmed contact registered at grid reference 52 Alpha. June 8th, 2019. The morning sun broke through thinning clouds over the visitor parking lot where Leanne McCord's beige Toyota remained undisturbed, a solitary vehicle in the overnight section. The dashboard displayed a parking permit valid until 1800 hours the previous day. A thin layer of mist-borne moisture had settled across the windshield, undisturbed by wipers. The car's presence initiated the first procedural step in what would become case file GSM 1974. Vehicle observed in overnight parking without extended stay permit, read the initial Ranger report, filed at 7:22 a.m. No return signature on trail register from previous day. Initial classification overdue hiker. By 9 a.m., Ranger Supervisor Daniel Wren had initiated standard protocol for an unreturned hiker, beginning with a communication attempt to the emergency contact listed on Leanne's trail registration card. The report notes 3 unanswered calls to her home and cell numbers before successfully reaching her mother, Catherine McCord, at 9:17 a.m. The report noted maternal distress but coherence, reads the incident summary. Contact confirmed subject had no history of extending outdoor activities without notification and expressed immediate concern. The metallic whine of a radio transmission cut through the visitor center as Wren upgraded the situation from overdue hiker to missing person class a designation that triggered mobilization of the park's initial search and rescue team. Rain had fallen overnight, moderate to heavy according to the weather station at Newfound Gap, which recorded 1.2 inches of precipitation between midnight and 5 a.m. The morning air carried the sharp, clean scent of ozone and wet stone. By 11:33 a.m., the team had assembled the first search elements. The operational log shows the methodical assembly of resources. 2 ground teams of 4 rangers each. K-9 Unit Bravo 2 with handler specialist Maria Cortez, and helicopter support requested from the Tennessee Highway Patrol. The standard equipment inventory for SAR operations was documented on Form 1341, listing items believed to be in Leanne's possession. 1 Columbia Day Pack, navy blue, 1 Nalgene water bottle, clear with green cap, 1 Garmin InReach mini GPS unit, serial number RX847392, 1 Black Diamond headlamp, 1 light rain jacket teal, emergency whistle attached to backpack strap, energy bars, quantity unknown, cellular phone Samsung Galaxy S9. The rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors echoed across the valley as the aerial unit initiated the first search pattern at 12:45 p.m. The sound competed with the steady patter of raindrops falling from tree canopies and the occasional crackle of radio communication. Mist detached slowly from the valley floors, revealing patches of terrain in brief windows of visibility before closing again. Holly McCord, Leanne's sister, arrived at the park lodge at 1400 hours, having driven through the night from Charlotte. Her official statement described the scene. Everyone was polite, procedural, but you could smell the dampness on their uniforms, see the concern they were trying to hide. They'd already started using past tense when discussing her route. The search team's first grid pattern returned no findings. No distress beacon had been activated. No emergency whistle heard. Signal lost. No further contact after 1200 hours per GPS scrub. Between 2017 and 2021, 13 disappearances occurred in the southern Smokies region under similar parameters. This statistic, cited in the National Park Service's 2022 Safety Protocol revision, would not provide comfort to the McCord family huddled in the ranger station on June 9th, but it would later contextualize the methodical, almost resigned efficiency with which the search operation expanded. Statistically, 81% of missing hikers are located within 24 hours. Assistant Park Superintendent Eliza Morgan explained to the assembled family members. The coffee in her cup steamed in the cool air of the conference room, adding a bitter note to the already tense atmosphere. Another 14% are located within 72 hours. We are still well within the window of high probability for a positive outcome. The numerical precision offered procedure where emotion threatened to overwhelm. Rangers moved between stations with clipboards that clicked against hard surfaces as they updated coordinates. The room smelled of wet uniforms drying under heating vents, the metallic tang of radio equipment, and the institutional coffee that had been brewing continuously since dawn. Standard National Park Service protocol mandates a 24-hour delay before expanding to full-scale search operations, a window designed to account for hikers who simply extend their journey without notification or experience minor delays returning to trailheads. By the 48-hour mark, triangulation via last known location had been completed, and the K9 grid array had been deployed across 4 primary search vectors extending from Leanne's last confirmed position. The morning briefing on June 9th unfolded in crisp, practiced tones. Search teams received their grid assignments as meteorologists projected weather patterns on topographical maps. The operational rhythm had taken on the qualities of a clinical procedure, coordinates replacing hopes, grid references standing in for the missing woman. "My sister is methodical to a fault," Holly McCord told investigators outside the ranger substation that morning, her voice steady despite reddened eyes. "She plans each hike with redundancies built in. She's the one who packs extra batteries and emergency blankets even for day hikes. She's the planner in our family." The formal search documentation noted this character assessment. Family describes subject as risk-averse, experienced in backcountry navigation, with no history of deviation from established routes. This description would later form a critical contradiction in the investigation. The careful preparation that should have prevented a disappearance, instead becoming a puzzle piece in its analysis. By afternoon, the search operation had fully mobilized. Incident Command established a mobile headquarters in the Visitor Center parking lot, the same location where Leanne's car remained undisturbed. Radio transmissions created a continuous background rhythm against the distant sound of search helicopters and the occasional bark of SAR dogs. The air carried the scent of diesel from generators powering the command center and the earthy dampness of the surrounding forest. At 16:23, Ranger Collins noted an unusual entry in the daily log. Wildlife Division reports unusual animal activity near Sticks Branch Gully, bears avoiding area despite food availability, possible human presence affecting territory behavior. This observation, seemingly peripheral at the time, would remain buried in the operational logs until October, when its significance would be re-evaluated under very different circumstances. June 10th arrived with clear skies and rising temperatures, optimal search conditions that brought both relief and anxiety to the operation. The 4th day of a missing person case marked a psychological threshold for search professionals. Statistically, survival probability began its first significant decline 72 hours after disappearance. The mission's tempo reflected this unspoken awareness: faster movement, more urgent radio calls, expanded resource deployment. By 0700 hours, 40 personnel had assembled at the Incident Command Center, including specialized teams from neighboring counties and K9 units Bravo 2 and Echo 1. The morning briefing carried the scent of coffee, boot leather, and nervous anticipation. Weather window is optimal but closing, the meteorologist informed the team leaders. Clear visibility until approximately 1600 hours, then precipitation returns. Priority to high elevation and water features. The search area map, later preserved in the National Archives copy of the case file, displayed an expanding series of concentric circles marked with burn-like rings indicating completed grid sweeps. The visible pattern revealed the mathematical progression of a desperate probability calculation, each expanding circle representing diminishing likelihood of discovery. At 08:15, the operational teams deployed. The rhythmic thud of helicopter rotors provided a steady backbeat to the morning as ground teams moved through their assigned sectors. Digital beacons flashed under patches of lingering fog, tracking each searcher's position in real time back to the command center. The command post hummed with radio communications, computer systems, and the low murmur of coordination staff tracking search patterns on large topographical displays. The methodical nature of the search contrasts with the emotional experience. Volunteer searcher Marcus Delgado would explain in an interview conducted years later for the Park Service training module on extended SAR operations. We maintained radio discipline, followed grid patterns, documented everything. But every searcher carries this knot in their stomach. We thought she was only a click or two off trail. That's the rational assumption. Someone got disoriented, maybe sustained a minor injury, but remained within recovery distance. By midday, the operational boundaries had expanded to cover approximately 6 square miles of rugged terrain. The summer heat had intensified, bringing with it the heavy scent of pine resin and the distant metallic odor of fuel from the helicopter support. Search dogs panted in the increasing temperature, working shorter rotations to maintain effectiveness. The SAR map overlay, updated hourly at the command center, showed each team's progress through their assigned grids with time-stamped verification. GPS tracking maintained position awareness for all searchers, a system designed partly to prevent additional missing persons during extended operations. At 14:37, Canine handler Cortez radioed in the day's first potential finding. K9 alert at coordinates Charlie 79er, east of Inspiration Point, investigating possible personal item. The radio crackled with static as the command center acknowledged and redirected additional resources to the location. 20 minutes later, Cortez confirmed discovery of a single hiking pole, its telescoping mechanism partially extended, lying approximately 4 meters from the established trail. The serial number, documented in the evidence log as BD75843, would later be matched to Leanne's purchase receipt from REI Knoxville dated March 22nd of that year. The discovery created a momentary surge of anticipation through the command center. Dean McCord, Leanne's father, who had been permitted to observe operations from the command post, later described the moment. Everyone tried to maintain professional composure, but you could see it in their posture. The first real lead. For a moment, hope felt tangible again. By 1600 hours, the search radius had expanded around the recovered hiking pole, but no additional items were located. The formal evidence log documented the pole's condition. Minimal environmental exposure consistent with less than 72 hours in elements. No visible blood or tissue. Extension mechanism locked, suggesting intentional rather than accidental placement. Every recorded detail pointed to preparedness. Nothing justified disappearance. Procedure had data, family had absence. June 12th through 15th saw the search operation expand to its full capacity. The operational boundary now encompassed a 12 square mile perimeter, extending far beyond the rational walking distance of even the most determined hiker. This expansion represented a tacit acknowledgement among search professionals. They were no longer looking for a lost hiker, but conducting a recovery operation under increasingly difficult odds. Grid Delta cleared. No positives. SAR Coordinator Chief Ellis Haney reported via radio on the morning of June 13th, his voice carrying the flat affect of professional restraint. The transmission was preserved in the operational logs, one of hundreds of similar reports that documented the methodical elimination of search areas without findings. The expanded search employed all available technologies: forward-looking infrared cameras mounted on aircraft, trail cameras redistributed to cover potential movement corridors, and drone teams covering inaccessible terrain features. The Air Ops flight schedule documented 17 separate aerial search patterns between June 12th and 15th, totaling 43 flight hours with zero significant findings. Rain returned on the evening of June 13th, a steady downpour that continued through the night and into the following morning. Search effectiveness decreased by an estimated 60% under these conditions, according to the operational assessment logged by Chief Haney. The sound of rain striking tent canopies at the forward base camp created a constant background noise that occasionally drowned out radio communications. Canine performance logs indicated decreased scent tracking capability, with handler notes indicating environmental saturation limiting effectiveness. Holly McCord maintained a near constant presence at the command center, her eyes tracking the movements of search teams on the digital displays. "I started noticing the searchers' eyes," she would later recall during the case review. Already tired on the second morning, they maintained professionalism, but fatigue was setting in. You could see it in how they moved, hear it in their voices during debriefs. The operational tempo had developed its own rhythm. Teams deployed at dawn, searched assigned sectors until dusk, returned for debriefing, and reset for the following day. Hope became measured in grid sections and time intervals, rather than emotional peaks. The smell of crushed vegetation and boot-packed mud permeated the forward operating areas, mingling with the scent of rain-soaked technical fabrics and the continuous production of coffee that fueled the operation. On June 15th, a potentially significant discovery emerged from the technical team reviewing data from wildlife monitoring cameras. Trail camera memory card 743, retrieved from a location near Alum Cave Bluff, contained images of the trail taken at regular 2-minute intervals throughout the day of Leanne's disappearance. Analysis revealed a curious anomaly. Between 1427 and 1430, where 2 images should have been recorded, the timestamp jumped directly to 1433. Digital timestamp misalignment. Noted, read the technical assessment. 3-minute gap, inconsistent with programming parameters. Equipment malfunction possible but not consistent with pre- and post-operational verification. The missing minutes represented the first potential electronic evidence of irregularity. Forensic analysis of the camera was immediately prioritized, with the device removed from the field and transported to the FBI field office in Knoxville. Preliminary examination found no physical tampering, but data recovery specialists identified what the report described as potential manual interruption of the power source for approximately 3 minutes, followed by automatic restart of the system. Whether this represented deliberate human interference or an equipment failure remained undetermined. The camera's position, however, overlooked a segment of trail Leanne would likely have passed during the time frame of the missing images, assuming her projected hiking pace from the trailhead. The technical anomaly added a disquieting element to an already troubling case. Hope became schedule, schedule became routine, routine threatened to become resignation. June 16th brought the first in a series of reported sightings and potential leads that would ultimately consume valuable search resources while yielding no actionable intelligence. The operational log for 0900 hours contains the first notation: civilian report. Light observed near Alum Bluff approx. 22:30 hours previous night. Witness camping at lower elevation observed what appeared to be flashlight or headlamp movement in non-designated camping area. The report came from Edward Laird, an experienced backpacker from Georgia who had been camping at a designated site approximately 1 mile below the bluff area. His statement, archived by the Sevier County Sheriff's Department, described seeing deliberate light movement, not consistent with other hikers. It appeared to be searching for something specific, moving in a grid pattern rather than along the trail. By mid-morning, a specialized team had been dispatched to the coordinates provided by Laird. The limestone formations near Alum Bluff dripped with condensation from the previous night's rainfall, creating a constant background percussion that competed with the team's careful footsteps. The air carried the damp, mineral smell of wet stone mixed with the musty scent of saturated nylon from the searchers' rain gear. At 11:47, the team reported finding what appeared to be a recently abandoned campsite, a small cleared area with compressed vegetation and remnants of a small fire. Approximately 2 meters from this location, partially concealed under a rock overhang, they discovered an LED headlamp with batteries still functional. Initial assessment suggested potential connection to the missing person, noted search team leader Sarah Hendricks in her field report. Proximity to last known route and time frame appeared consistent with case parameters. The discovery temporarily redirected significant resources to the area. Canine teams were deployed specifically to the site, and an expanded search radius was established around the location. The headlamp was carefully documented, photographed in place, and collected as potential evidence. By 1800 hours, however, forensic comparison had determined the headlamp was a different model than the one Leanne was known to carry, a black diamond spot, rather than her documented Petzl Actic. Further analysis of the campsite revealed boot prints inconsistent with Leanne's hiking footwear, and carbon dating of the fire remnants suggested it had been extinguished approximately 36 hours prior to discovery, placing it outside the critical time frame. Edward Laird, upon further questioning, acknowledged he had consumed 2 or possibly 3 alcoholic beverages prior to the reported sighting and could not rule out that the light movement might have been other overnight hikers returning to designated camping areas. The false lead consumed approximately 27 personnel hours, noted the operational assessment. Necessary investigative procedure, but ultimately unproductive. Similar reports emerged over the subsequent 2 days. A torn fabric resembling hiking apparel found near a stream crossing, later identified as unrelated debris. A reported voice heard by day hikers, determined to be other search teams, and potential footprints on an unauthorized side trail, confirmed as search team impressions from previous grid sweeps. Each lead followed the same pattern: initial surge of hope, methodical investigation, documented elimination, and return to the expanding search pattern. Each investigation left a heavier silence in its wake, a growing awareness that the critical window for discovery was closing. On June 18th, during an evening sweep of a previously searched area, one of the audio recording devices placed to detect potential calls for help captured what the technical analysis described as faint vocalization potentially female. Duration approximately 1.7 seconds. The recording quality, degraded by environmental factors, prevented positive identification or language analysis. The location was immediately flagged for intensive research the following day. The next morning's search revealed no additional evidence. Misidentification consumes manpower. Stillness returns heavier. June 19th marked a procedural shift in the search operation, with traditional methods yielding no significant discoveries after 12 days. Incident Command approved limited family participation in specific, low-risk search activities. This decision, documented in Operational Directive GSM SAR 1974B, noted, familial knowledge of subjects' habits and preferences may provide investigative advantage in terrain selection and route analysis. Dean McCord, Leanne's father and a former Forestry Service employee with extensive backcountry experience, was integrated into a line search team operating in a previously cleared area near the junction of Alum Cave Trail and the Mount LeConte Spur. The morning briefing included specific limitations on his role. He would remain paired with 2 experienced rangers at all times, maintain radio contact, and be restricted to already secured terrain. Having her father participate was both a compassionate and practical decision. Search Operations Director Melinda Torres would later explain in her case summary. His knowledge of her outdoor preferences had practical application, and it provided the family some agency in a situation where helplessness had become its own form of trauma. The search line moved methodically through a section of forest approximately 2 miles from Leanne's last known location. 8 personnel spread at 10-meter intervals moved in parallel formation, examining ground cover and vegetation for any signs of disturbance. The forest floor released the scent of decomposing organic matter with each step, a rich, earthy smell, punctuated by the occasional sweetness of blooming mountain laurel. Insects hummed in the summer heat, creating a constant background resonance, occasionally interrupted by the whispered communications through handheld radios. At approximately 13:14 hours, Dean McCord stopped suddenly, stepping out of the search line formation. His assigned ranger partners later reported that he knelt to examine something partially concealed in the leaf litter. The field note, handwritten by Ranger Tamara Wilson, reads, "Subject's father identified. Fabric fragment color teal, consistent with missing person's described rain jacket. Location marked at coordinates 44 by 76. Elevation 5,210 feet. The fabric, approximately 8 centimeters by 12 centimeters, appeared to have been torn rather than cut, according to the evidence documentation. Its discovery location was approximately 40 meters from the established trail in an area that had been previously searched during the initial operation but without canine assistance due to weather conditions. The finding redirected search efforts to the surrounding area, with canine units brought in despite the significant time elapsed since Leanne's disappearance. The evidence log documents the recovery process. Item secured in sterile evidence container at 13:27 hours. Photographs taken of original position and surrounding terrain. GPS coordinates logged and marked for expanded search parameter. Dean McCord's reaction, noted in Ranger Wilson's supplemental report, revealed the dual nature of evidence in missing person cases, simultaneously providing hope through connection while confirming the reality of loss. Subject's father displayed emotional distress but maintained composure, stated that's from her Columbia jacket. Birthday present last year. Has a small repair on the left cuff she made herself. The fabric was immediately transported to the FBI field office in Knoxville for expedited analysis. Preliminary testing confirmed the material matched the composition and coloration of the Columbia rain jacket Leanne was believed to be carrying. Microscopic examination revealed the tear pattern consistent with application of force rather than environmental degradation or animal activity. By 2100 hours, the lab had attempted DNA analysis on the fabric. The results, documented in Forensic Report FBI KX 19473, stated, partial DNA recovery achieved. Sample quality insufficient for conclusive identification, but preliminary markers consistent with reference sample provided by family. Contamination from environmental exposure limits certainty. The discovery represented both a breakthrough and a deepening mystery, the first physical evidence directly linked to Leanne, found in an area that should have been thoroughly searched, with damage suggesting deliberate force rather than accidental loss. Evidence becomes emotional currency. Every discovery, simultaneously, offers connection and confirms loss. The statistical realities of wilderness disappearances cast an increasingly heavy shadow over the search operation as it entered its third week. Median resolution window for isolated hiker disappearances is 96 hours. Probability of live recovery drops under 10% after day 5. These figures, cited during the morning briefing on June 21st, were delivered with clinical precision that did nothing to soften their impact. We maintain full operational capability. Incident Commander Torres informed the assembled team leaders and family representatives. But we are obligated to acknowledge the statistical framework within which we operate. The meeting room fell silent except for the soft, mechanical hum of the ventilation system and the occasional shuffle of documentation being distributed. The atmosphere carried the weight of unspoken transition, from rescue to recovery, from hope to documentation. The operational log for that day contains a single line that encapsulates this shift. Command authorizes scale back Phase 1. This procedural language masked the human impact of the decision. Scale back Phase 1 meant reducing ground search personnel by 40%, limiting helicopter operations to specific targeted areas rather than broad sweeps, and consolidating command operations back to the main visitor center rather than maintaining the forward base camp. Drone footage captured during this period shows the methodical disassembly of the forward operating area, tents being collapsed, equipment loaded into vehicles, the command center tent standing empty with map displays, still showing the last search patterns. The footage, played without narration during the subsequent case review, conveyed more about the emotional weight of the decision than any operational language could express. Search Operations Log, June 21, 2019, begins the document later included in the case file. Grid sectors Alpha through Echo cleared with negative results. Sectors Foxtrot through Hotel cleared with negative results. Sector India yielded 1 fabric sample, previously documented. Sectors Juliet through Lima, scheduled for final sweep operations, June 22nd through 24th. The clinical language of the log continued, listing coordinates, personnel assignments, and equipment allocations, each line representing hours of physical exertion, emotional investment, and diminishing hope. The document stands as testament to the invisible paradox of search operations. As the probability of success diminishes, the thoroughness of documentation increases. Holly McCord, observing the scale-back preparations, later described watching the search teams return from their assignments. They wouldn't make eye contact anymore. Their reports became shorter, more technical. Everyone was shifting to documentation mode, preserving the search process itself when they couldn't preserve my sister. The search had yielded only 2 physical items, a single hiking pole, and a torn fabric sample, despite more than 7,000 personnel hours invested across 14 days of continuous operations. The terrain had been surveyed by aircraft, drones, ground teams, and canine units. Every water feature had been examined for evidence of accident. Every cave entrance and rock shelter within the search radius had been inspected. What remained was the uncomfortable space between absence and explanation, the lack of sufficient evidence to determine what had happened, but enough disruption to confirm something had. The statistical model suggested accident or exposure, but the minimal evidence recovered contradicted the patterns typically associated with those outcomes. On the evening of June 21st, the family was formally briefed on the transition to limited ongoing search operations. The meeting, documented in the case file as Family Consultation 1974C, included representatives from the National Park Service, FBI, and local law enforcement. "We will maintain active investigative status," the FBI liaison assured the family. "But we must acknowledge the statistical realities while transitioning to sustainable long-term search protocols." The operational documents from this period reflect a gradual surrender to probability, not abandonment of effort, but recognition of limits. Families count hours, investigators count coordinates. Both measures shrink. October 3rd, 2019. The summer search operation for Leanne McCord had been officially suspended since July 7th, though routine ranger patrols maintained awareness of the case and occasional targeted searches were conducted when new hikers reported potential findings. The formal case classification had shifted to long-term missing person, a designation that acknowledged both ongoing investigative responsibility and diminished expectations of resolution. The breakthrough, when it came, arrived through entirely unrelated circumstances. Two out-of-state hunters, Bradley Thompson and James Worley from Georgia, had received special permits for fall turkey hunting in a designated section of the park's southern boundary. Their documented statement filed to Great Smoky Mountains National Park law enforcement case, Ledger SM 19347, described the discovery. "We were checking a small shelter, looked like an old trail maintenance shed, about half a mile off Walker Camp Prong. Inside there was some weird stuff, canned food, some tarps. Looked like someone had been staying there. What caught our attention was this piece of rope hanging from one of the rafters. It didn't look right. Had what looked like human hair braided into it." The hunter's report reached Ranger Marissa Holt, who responded to the location with a forensic documentation team. The abandoned structure, not appearing on current park maps, was estimated to be a remnant from Conservation Corps activities in the 1930s, later used for trail maintenance storage, but officially decommissioned in the early 2000s. The morning air carried a distinct chill, with frost forming thin crystalline patterns on the dead leaves surrounding the structure. Inside, the team documented the scene with methodical precision. The shelter smelled of kerosene from an old stove that showed signs of recent use, the ranger's breath condensed in visible clouds as they cataloged each item. Canned food with recent expiration dates, water containers, tarps arranged into a crude sleeping area, and the rope that had drawn the hunter's attention. Item of primary concern: synthetic rope. Approximately 1.5 meters in length, diameter 1 centimeter, with what appears to be human hair intentionally incorporated into the braided structure, read the evidence documentation. Hair color consistent with dark brown to black. Length of strands, approximately 20 to 25 centimeters. Photographs taken at the scene show the rope suspended from a ceiling beam with multiple strands of dark hair visibly intertwined with the synthetic fibers. The collection process was documented in detailed procedural notes, with the rope secured in an evidence container and transported directly to the FBI Knoxville Resident Agency for expedited analysis. The discovery fundamentally altered the investigative framework, noted the case assessment prepared by Senior Ranger Investigator Paul Martinez. Evidence of potential human confinement shifted the classification from missing person possible accident to suspected criminal activity. Ranger Holt forwarded all documentation and physical evidence to the FBI Knoxville office with priority classification. The accompanying report noted, connection to McCord disappearance cannot be confirmed, but location falls within extended search radius of June operation. Request priority DNA comparison with reference samples on file. What had begun as a wilderness disappearance, assumed to be the result of accident, disorientation, or environmental factors, now carried the weight of potential criminal intervention. The rope, with its disturbing modification, transformed absence into evidence. Within 48 hours, preliminary DNA testing had been completed. The official report, logged as FBI Laboratory Analysis 2019 KX872, contained the assessment. Mitochondrial DNA extracted from hair samples is consistent with reference samples provided by McCord family. Probability of match 99.7%. Hair removal pattern consistent with forcible extraction rather than natural shedding. The search file, which had been transitioning toward cold case status, was immediately reactivated and reclassified. What had been a rescue operation, then a recovery effort, now became a criminal investigation. Rescue file converted into criminal evidence record. A notation in the margin of the FBI case file reads simply, survivable accident no longer primary theory. Laboratory analysis confirmed what investigators had feared. The hair integrated into the rope belonged to Leanne McCord. The FBI Form FD-302, completed on October 7th, detailed findings that pushed the investigation into darker territory than anyone had anticipated during the summer search operation. Examination of the submitted item reveals rope fibers composed of standard commercial paracord, externally with an interior core containing human keratin, hair, interlaced during construction, the report stated. The integration pattern suggests deliberate incorporation during manufacture rather than accidental contamination, requiring intentional modification of the standard product. The sterile language of the report belied the disturbing implications. Under the laboratory's fluorescent lights, technicians in latex gloves had methodically disassembled the rope strand by strand, documenting each component with clinical precision. Their measured breathing and occasional murmured observations provided the only sounds in the otherwise silent examination room. The discovery of human remains integrated into what appeared to be a handcrafted restraint device shifted the investigation from a missing person case to a suspected homicide. The FBI formally joined the investigation under interstate jurisdiction provisions, with Special Agent Rebecca Taylor assigned as lead investigator. We are now investigating this as a suspected criminal act, Agent Taylor informed the McCord family during a closed briefing on October 9th. The evidence suggests intentional harm rather than accident or exposure. Holly McCord's statement, recorded during this briefing, captured the family's struggle to comprehend this development. We can't picture what that means. For months we've imagined her lost, injured, but not this. Not someone doing this to her. The investigation expanded rapidly, with additional resources deployed to thoroughly examine the shelter where the rope had been discovered. Forensic teams conducted extensive analysis of the site, recovering fingerprints, additional hair samples, fabric fibers, and trace evidence. The entire structure was documented using three-dimensional scanning technology, creating a virtual model for ongoing investigative reference. Among the most significant findings from secondary examination was soil residue recovered from the rope itself. Analysis conducted by the FBI laboratory in Quantico identified particulates inconsistent with the shelter's location. Soil composition includes calcium carbonate concentrations and bat guano derivatives consistent with cave environments, noted the geological analysis report. The specific mineral combination suggests subterranean location rather than surface exposure at an elevation below human habitation range. This finding directed investigators toward the extensive cave systems known to exist throughout the park. Many remained unmapped or only partially documented due to hazardous conditions or protected species habitats. The indication that Leanne might have been held in a subterranean location added urgency to the search. Such environments could potentially sustain human survival far longer than exposed wilderness. By October 15th, a specialized cave search team had been assembled, including members from the National Cave Rescue Commission and forensic specialists with subterranean experience. The operation focused initially on known cave systems within a 5-mile radius of both the shelter where the rope was discovered and Leanne's last known location on the Alum Cave Trail. The investigation now operates under dual hypotheses, stated the operational briefing. Either the subject was transported to the subterranean location after initial capture, or she was led there under false pretenses or coercion. The possibility that someone had been living in the park undetected, potentially responsible for Leanne's disappearance, cast the wilderness in a new and threatening light. What had been viewed as neutral terrain, challenging but governed by natural laws, now became a potential concealment zone for deliberate human predation. Additional evidence continued to emerge from laboratory analysis. Microscopic examination of the rope revealed traces of accelerant consistent with kerosene, suggesting proximity to the heating source found in the shelter. More disturbingly, the rope showed evidence of use, stress patterns, and wear consistent with resistance against restraint. Discovery that redefines absence as captivity. The wilderness ceased being neutral terrain. The joint investigation with the U.S. Forest Service intensified as October progressed. On October 22nd, the specialized cave team made a breakthrough discovery near Styx Branch, approximately 3 miles southeast of where the modified rope had been found. A narrow opening, partially concealed by fallen logs and vegetation, led to what the investigation report described as a modified natural cave structure with evidence of sustained human occupation. The concealed entrance required team members to descend through a narrow vertical shaft approximately 7 meters deep before opening into a larger chamber. Water dripped slowly but continuously from rock seams overhead, creating a persistent background rhythm that marked time in the darkness. The air carried the dense organic smell of leaf mold, mixed with the sharper scent of mineral deposits, all underscored by the unmistakable evidence of human presence. Site appears to have been intentionally modified to serve as a shelter, noted FBI Special Agent Taryn Miles in her on-scene assessment. Entrance concealed, with natural materials arranged to prevent discovery. Interior shows evidence of long-term occupation, including sleeping area, food storage, waste management system, and what appears to be a restraint station. The cave contained a disturbing collection of items: camp shovels with soil residue matching samples from the rope, cooking implements including tins with food residue, a makeshift bed area constructed of natural materials and synthetic tarps, and most significantly, several restraints consistent with the handmade bindings previously discovered. It was organized, inhabited. Somebody lived out here unseen, Special Agent Miles observed during the video recorded site documentation. The level of preparation suggests this wasn't opportunistic. This location was selected and prepared in advance. The forensic team processed the site with painstaking thoroughness, documenting every item in place before collection. The cave's constant temperature and humidity had preserved evidence that might otherwise have degraded in exposed conditions. Fingerprints were recovered from multiple surfaces, later identified as matching an unknown subject not present in law enforcement databases. Among the most significant discoveries was a soil sample collected from the area designated as the restraint station. Initial field testing indicated the presence of biological material, and subsequent laboratory analysis confirmed human remains. Specifically, a fragment of tibial bone approximately 3 centimeters in length. DNA extraction from the bone fragment confirms biological relation to reference samples provided by the McCord family, stated the laboratory report dated October 25th. Fracture pattern suggests perimortem trauma consistent with blunt force application rather than post-mortem environmental damage. This discovery transformed the investigation, once again, from criminal abduction to probable homicide. The report, delivered to the McCord family by Agent Taylor and Park Superintendent Charles Everett, carried the weight that statistics and probabilities had suggested but that hope had resisted for months. We believe Leanne was held at this location for an undetermined period, Agent Taylor explained during the family briefing. The evidence suggests she did not survive the captivity. The cave site yielded additional evidence about the perpetrator, a notebook containing writings described in the evidence log as consistent with survivalist ideology and expressions of misanthropy. The entries, some dated as far back as 2017, detailed the subject's increasing isolation from society and development of an alternative existence within the park boundaries. One entry dated June 5th, 2019, 2 days before Leanne's disappearance, read, "The hikers pass above, never looking down. Their noise pollutes the silence. Soon I will have company that understands the quiet." The investigation now focused on identifying the unknown subject, with fingerprints, DNA evidence, and handwriting samples processed through national databases. Surveillance was established at the cave site and shelter location in case the subject returned to either location. Wilderness ceased being neutral terrain. Human predation had established territory within what visitors perceived as natural space. October 27th, 2019. Acting on information from a park maintenance worker who reported a man matching the suspect description near Newfound Gap Road, law enforcement apprehended Eli Cutter, a 37-year-old transient with previous arrests for trespassing on federal land and minor assault charges in Tennessee and North Carolina. Sevier County Case 19 CR 741 documents the arrest and subsequent processing. Cutter was taken into custody without incident while attempting to purchase supplies at a convenience store near the park boundary. The arrest report notes he carried a backpack containing basic survival supplies, approximately $300 in cash, and a GPS unit that would later prove crucial to the investigation. Inside the Sevier County holding facility, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the interview room as FBI Special Agent Taylor conducted the Mirandized interview. The metallic clink of handcuffs occasionally punctuated the silence between questions. The transcript documents Cutter's initial denial of involvement, followed by gradual acknowledgement as evidence was presented. "I live differently than others," he stated at one point in the recorded interview. "The mountains provide everything I need. Sometimes I need company in the silence." Forensic analysis of Cutter's GPS unit revealed waypoint logs that overlapped with Leanne's known route on June 7th, including coordinates near where her hiking pole had been recovered. Additional evidence recovered from his backpack included a journal with entries describing the quiet one who walks alone and an unsent letter addressed simply to her, the quiet one. Psychological evaluation conducted as part of the pretrial process described Cutter as exhibiting signs of paranoid personality disorder with antisocial features, exacerbated by extended isolation. His statements during evaluation sessions revealed a distorted perception of relationships and consent, with Cutter describing his actions as keeping company with silence, rather than abduction and harm. Isolation as both motive and madness. The methodical hunter had become indistinguishable from the wilderness itself. The legal proceedings against Eli Cutter unfolded throughout the winter and spring following his arrest. U.S. District Court transcription, Sevier County Docket, 1938b, documents the case that captured national attention and raised troubling questions about safety in wilderness areas. In the courtroom, the ventilation system created a continuous background hum that seemed to emphasize rather than mask the tension. Chairs scraped occasionally against tile floors as attorneys moved between tables. Throughout the proceedings, muffled sobs punctuated particularly difficult testimony, especially when evidence photographs were displayed. Holly McCord testified on February 12, 2020, holding the search area map that had guided volunteer efforts the previous summer. The exhibit, still stained with marker bleed where grid sections had been highlighted, trembled visibly in her hands as she identified locations where she had participated in the search for her sister. "We walked right past where she was being held," Holly testified. "We called her name. We were so close." The trial concluded on March 3rd with a unanimous guilty verdict on charges of kidnapping resulting in death, with additional convictions for evidence tampering and improper disposal of human remains. Cutter received a sentence of life imprisonment without possibility of parole. In the aftermath of the case, the National Park Service initiated a comprehensive review of safety protocols for solo hikers. The revised procedures, implemented in June 2020, included mandatory GPS check-ins at 2-hour intervals for registered solo hikers, enhanced cellular signal repeaters at key trail junctions, and increased ranger patrols in remote areas. The trail register at Alum Cave Trailhead was redesigned with a plexiglass cover, the pen secured with a chain to the clipboard. The system adaptation represented a procedural response to a tragedy that defied procedural prevention. A wilderness hazard that could not be marked with warning signs or mitigated through standard safety practices. The systems adapted, the families did not. Winter sunlight glances against the same Alum Cave trailhead. The rebuilt register rests under plexiglass, pen chained to the clipboard. Inside, one entry stands between routine notes about weather and mileage for those still unreturned. No signature follows, only the indentation of pressure where someone thought of writing and did not.